The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, some of you have already noticed the background is different. Where am I? What happened? I'm same place, my usual office in San Juan. I put up a black curtain behind me for some other videos I am producing, and I was too lazy to take it down, so it's back there. I'm curious, what do you think? I mean, is this better than kind of the regular room environment? Is this more interesting? Is that more interesting? You know, you can use the chat to let me know, or use the comment section to let me know what you think. I'm always interested in what you have to say. So here we are. What is it today? I don't even know what day it is. Friday evening, and you guys are here to listen to me talk about Andrew Yang. I don't know. All right, we're gonna be talking about Andrew Yang today. For those of you who don't know who Andrew Yang is, Andrew Yang is an entrepreneur who then founded a nonprofit, who is now running for president. He's running for president in the Democratic primaries. And, you know, I think when he started out his campaign, people very much thought, well, you know, nothing's going to come of this guy. He's kind of a geek. He doesn't have that much charisma, and nobody knows who he is. And he's just this business guy who runs a nonprofit, and who's going to support him? I mean, him versus a reality TV star. I mean, it's no competition. Or senators, or former vice presidents, or everything else. So I think he's been dismissed, or was dismissed. But he's already, he's doing quite well in the polling. He's got, I think, over 160,000 people who give him money. So he has qualified for the next round of debates. And I think he's got some legs. I think he's got the possibility. There's a real possibility. I don't think he can win, but he will go deep, at least for a while, through the primaries, at least the beginning of the primaries, and primarily because he attracts supporters who tend to be young, geeky, internet, you know, working for internet companies, will be internet entrepreneurs, and he has been endorsed. He has been endorsed by Elon Musk, so he is Elon Musk's candidate for president of the United States. And I think the reason he's doing so well is, and you'll see, I'm gonna play you some of his interviews. I've got two very long clips of his interviews. So I don't know if we're gonna be able to how much we'll be able to get into this, but he comes across as kind of a nice guy, as honest and straightforward, and he doesn't strike one as a power luster. He's not slick. He's not a politician, and that's unbelievably refreshing. But he's also not a showman like Trump, who is obviously not a politician. He just strikes one as a straight shooting kind of business guy who has these views and wants to make a difference, and is running for president because he cares, and he has some fresh, new ideas. He's willing to say stuff nobody else is willing to say. And a lot of people out there are intrigued. And I have to say, given that I am searching desperately for a candidate who theoretically I can vote for, who is not named Donald Trump, I'm looking at all the Democratic candidates, and on the face of it, without listening to what he actually has to say, but just seeing his mannerisms and the way he presents himself and how articulate he is and how well-spoken he is, I mean, Andrew Yang seems like somebody, yeah, okay, you know, he's the antithesis of Donald Trump. He's also the antithesis of like an Elizabeth Warren and a what's his name? The former vice president. I mean, he's just one of these guys who just strikes one as being straight and has ideas. And we'll see in a minute, the more you dig into, the more you discover the ideas are completely, really, really bad and misguided. But he's not a politician. Biden, of course, was the name I was looking for. Biden. So, unfortunately, I'm going to have to say he is just not going to be somebody I can support. And we'll get into why in a minute. So I'm still looking. So if anybody has some ideas of Democratic candidates who worthy of supporting, let me know. Let me know. I'd love to do one of these commentary sections on them to see if there's anything that's not him. He's not Bernie Sanders. That's a good point. Yaron makes the point that he's also not Bernie Sanders. He's not a socialist. I mean, his policies, as we'll see, are not that far off. But he strikes me as somebody who's really trying to figure out solutions to the problems that he sees. Now, the problems are not problems. He's not seeing them right, and the solutions are not solutions. But that, of course, is a different issue. All right, so let's jump into this, and let's jump into these clips. Now, these clips are from an interview he did with H3. I don't know who H3 is. Does anybody know who H3 is? But he's got like a gazillion subscribers, like 1.3 million subscribers, this guy. He does a show with his Israeli wife. You'll see her in a minute. And they just chat about, I don't know. This is the only show I've seen. But it's like, he's got 1.3 million subscribers. Wow. I mean, it's impressive. Carol says H3 is great fun. I mean, you'll see him here. He looks pretty boring to me. So maybe I'm just not capturing in the right, I don't know, moment, in the right context. But here he seems pretty boring. Okay. We're going to get to the UBI. We're going to get to Andrew Young's signature policy, but not straight away. We're going to go through some of his other policies because I think they set up the UBI. I don't think you can understand his UBI policy without understanding some of these other issues. So we're going to go through this interview. I'm starting it out 5 minutes in, I think, and we're going to go through a bunch of stuff on this. Then we're going to switch to another video, also with H3, where he talks about the UBI. So, let's go. This should be interesting, right? And it's educational, and he talks, it's not Bernie Sanders, so he's listenable. You can actually listen to this guy. I know, Jennifer thinks he's creepy. I don't see him as creepy. I don't know. All right, here we go. Whoops. I'm on the wrong, I've got you on the wrong, there we go. That's better. There's H3. I don't know who he is, but there's H3. He doesn't look fun. Does he look fun? And you'll see his wife in a minute. I don't know. Callie, you're going to have to tell him what makes him fun. You have to tell me what makes him fun. Here we go.
Yeah, the numbers bear it out, too. I mean, our economy has stopped producing quality jobs with benefits for years and years, where 94% of the new jobs that are getting created are temp, gig, or contractor jobs.
I mean, let's start with the fact that our economy doesn't create good jobs, interesting jobs, worthwhile jobs. I mean, everybody is saying this. And yet, if you compare our economy today to the economy 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, or even 20 years ago, the number of jobs that are focused on mental effort, focused on the mind, it's gone through the roof. The number of jobs that are focused on things like programming, various design jobs, everything to do with computers, designing games, these are truly amazing jobs that pay well, and yet these jobs didn't exist. Just didn't exist. Not that long ago. So this whole rhetoric of the U.S. economy has not produced any good jobs is just nonsense. And I would venture that this 94%, I haven't researched it, but I will. I'll research it and I'll get back to you guys. But I'd venture that the 94% of new jobs are temporary jobs or gig economy jobs like driving for Uber and so on. Well, there are a lot of those jobs, and those are fantastic jobs, as an alternative to having no job, or as an alternative to doing something more meaningful on the side, which is something Yang supports. So it's funny to be criticizing these jobs. 94% is just not true. It's just a wrong statistic. I'm curious how that is even calculated, but as compared to what, in a sense? 94% of all the new jobs. Really? But the idea that the U.S. economy hasn't created great jobs, it's just wrong. I mean, the number of great jobs being created is in the stratosphere. That's, by the way, his Israeli wife.
That often don't have secure benefits. And so if that's what you're producing in your economy, then people rightfully feel like their future is often quite bleak.
So let's say we get the freedom dividend going, and we're giving everyone $1,000 a month.
The freedom dividend is the UBI. That's what he's calling it. He like a good politician, he polled, and the freedom dividend polled best. It polled best, by the way, among Republicans. They love the word freedom, and he's attracting certain Republican support. I see we've got some Andrew Yang supporters on my chat. That's great. Thanks for joining us. We'll see if you still like your candidate after we dissect what he has to say.
To explain that maybe a little more in case anyone doesn't know.
Yeah, I should get into that, but I'll finish this thought and we'll get into it. But like, if we're giving people $1,000 a month, is that going to solve that issue even? You know, like, and if we keep going into the future, 50 years, 100 years, I mean, how many jobs are left, right?
Well, this is the fundamental reinvention that's in many ways at the heart of my campaign. So right now, our economy revolves around these ideas of capital efficiency, where the market says, you know, if you're an accountant, you're worth $75,000.
By the way, what he means by capital efficiency is how much value do you create? So he says today jobs revolve around this idea of value creation. You're an accountant, you create value for people in doing their books, let's say. Then they pay you based on the value you add to them, how efficient you are for their capital. And this is what he's criticizing. And he says all these jobs are based on, he calls it capital efficiency because that makes it seem financial and kind of nasty and maybe bad. But what he's really talking about is value creation. And he's saying there's a problem. And the problem he's identified is true.
46,000. And what I'm saying right now is, look, technology is going to come that's going to do the job of the accountant and the truck driver. And then what is their new market worth going to be?
That's right. So technology is going to come in, and we're going to have driverless trucks one day. We're going to have, software that does accounting, I hope. I mean, that would be fantastic. Save me a lot of money. And we're going to have radiologists that are going to be replaced. And what are people going to do? There are going to be no jobs in the economy. Now, what's amazing to me about this whole line of argument is they all think they've invented it. They think this is new. Robots are going to take everybody's jobs, and that has never happened before. Robots are going to take anybody's jobs, and since that's never happened before, we can't imagine a world in which people have other jobs. Their jobs are going to be taken by robots. And they ignore the last 250 years. So they ignore the agricultural revolution. 250 years ago, 90% of us were farmers. Today, less than 1% of us are farmers. There's more food in the world today than ever before. And yet, 1% of us in the United States. In the world, the percentage is higher. But it's shrinking dramatically over time. And yet, people are working. There's no shortage of jobs. Certainly not on a global scale. There are more jobs today than there ever have been in all of human history. But suddenly, this is new. Wait, robots are going to take our jobs. What are people going to do? And they can't imagine the new jobs that will be created. Yeah, it's hard to imagine those new jobs. I can't imagine them either. But if you study history just a little bit, what about the sewing machines, the first excuse for the Luddites to burn down factories claiming they would take all the jobs away? What about the assembly line by Ford? And what has happened to the standard of living, quality of life, and the quality of the jobs we have? The quality of the jobs we have. The fact is that labor participation rates in the world globally have never been higher than they are today. Globally, more people are working in productive activities for trade than in any point in all of human history. I'm not talking about unemployment numbers. I'm talking about the number of people working in a job that produces a value to be traded. Never in all of human history have we come close to the number or the percentage of people working. Now, in the United States, labor participation rates are low for a variety of reasons. But globally, this is a global issue, not a U.S. issue. We could talk about why they're low in the U.S., and it has nothing to do with technology and everything to do with education, welfare, and all Andrew Yang, UBI, is going to do is decrease the labor participation rate, going to reduce the incentive to go into the labor force. I love it when all the Andrew Yang people are coming to my chat, and all they do is ad hominems. They don't argue. They just say, "Oh, that's nonsense." Well, what have I said that's nonsense? Give me one fact that is nonsense. The fact is more people are working today for value-creating jobs in spite of the fact that we have more and more technology. The fact is that all those people who used to work in agriculture do not work in agriculture anymore, and yet they have jobs. The fact is that while we don't have as many manufacturing jobs today, we have masses of numbers of computer programming jobs that are far better and far better paying. The fact is that if not for regulations and controls and taxes and the distortion that the government creates in our economy, we would have millions and millions and millions of additionally good-paying jobs in the U.S. But globally, there's no dispute. I mean, you've got tens of millions of people in China working in productive trade-related activities that didn't work. They were farmers just 20, 30 years ago. That's true in India. That's true in Thailand. That's true in South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore. Just the sheer number of people working in productive trade-related activities is mind-boggling as compared to any other time in human history. And yet, we're worried that robots are going to take out. Yeah, you should be worried about robots taking your job. But in aggregate, I am willing to bet my entire net worth that in 50 years there will be more jobs, more work to do than there is today. More people working in productive activities than there are today. Okay. So I know you guys are asking a lot of questions. We'll get to them. I really am trying to get through this interview with Yang because he brings up a lot of important issues. This jobs are all going to go away is probably the most important one. You've got Elon Musk behind this. You've got a bunch of Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. You've got Yuval Harari, who I did a video about a week ago, really pushing this idea. But it's really a lack of understanding of history, a lack of understanding of economics, a lack of understanding of human nature, a lack of understanding of human need. And history proves it wrong. Technology creates more jobs than it destroys, always and everywhere, and always has been and always will be. Here we go.
Not what it was, it's sort of unclear what the new value is. So we're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in human history. And we need to start finding new pursuits and jobs and ways to value our own time.
That's all true. I agree with that completely. We need to start finding new pursuits, new jobs. We need to think about whether our job is going to be eliminated by a computer, by a robot, and retraining ourselves and thinking about the kind of jobs that will not be taken by computers and orienting our training towards those kind of jobs. That is definitely something that we as individuals need to do.
One of the examples I use that my wife is at home with our two boys, one of whom has autism, and the market values her work at zero.
But yeah, if your wife is at home, her market value is zero. Well, not really. Is her market value at zero? Where's she getting her market value from? Who is she producing value for? Well, she's producing value for your kids who are not in a position to pay for that value. And she's producing value for you, Andrew Lang, so you can run around the country running for president. And what does she get in exchange for the value she's producing for you? Well, half of your income. Half of the income you're producing. So you're producing income for both of you, and that value is in exchange for her raising kids. But raising kids does not produce value for other people, so other people don't pay her to do it. Now, his solution ultimately, I think, although he never actually says it, is the government should pay her. Society somehow should pay her. But how does that actually work? And how does society place a value on raising kids? How do we measure that? Where's the price mechanism to tell us this is a value or not? Do we vote on it? Where does the money for the government to pay every person out there who's raising kids come from? How do you do all that? He never explains that because there is no way to do it, and he has no explanation for it.
Millions of women around the country in the same boat where we're like, your time's worth zero. And we all know that the work
I guess now her time is worth $1,000 a month, which is the UBI.
some of the hardest and most
Oh my
important
God.
work that anyone does. Yeah, you have a 2-month-old. You're like, holy crap, this is the hardest
my
job
God.
ever to do.
That's the
The
issue with
hardest.
capitalism, though, right? Because they don't produce.
Yeah, we don't get paid for how hard the work we do is. We get paid for how productive we are. We get paid for how much value we create for other people. We don't get paid for how hard the work is. We get paid when we can differentiate ourselves from other people, where the work we do is unique, where the work we do is value creating. You don't get paid for working hard. Nobody cares if you work hard. What they care about is how much you produce.
Like tangible, I guess tangible. They don't right produce to the economy in a touchable way, right? It's an
Right.
intangible asset.
And so in a way, we have to transform what we think of as tangible value. So if you make another human being stronger and healthier, that's actually
That's good.
yeah, immensely valuable.
Yeah.
But this is the question. Who is the we? Who is the we who's going to transform what we think is tangible? And who gets to decide that? The beauty of capitalism, the beauty of free markets, is, in a sense, nobody decides. We each decide for ourselves what we think is tangible, what we're willing to pay for, and then we go out there and we trade with other people, freely, without coercion, without forcing anybody. But each individual under capitalism is not forced to make any kind of decision about what he views as tangible or not. What Andrew Yang and really all statists or central planners want to do is tell us what we should view as tangible. Tell us, what we should value and therefore what we should pay for. So Andrew is unfortunately like every other central planner. He wants to impose his values, his views, his standards on all of us. And that's the negation of freedom. That's the essence of what freedom isn't. Freedom is you choosing what you value, not somebody else choosing for you what you should value.
It's just right now our economic statistics don't value that appropriately.
Or investing in and having a happy, healthy family is good for society.
Yes. And so this is the great opportunity.
Because what does good for society mean? Good for whom in society? Now, being healthy and raising a happy family is good for you. And yeah, other people benefit from it as well. But are they going to pay you so you raise a happy family? And if they don't pay you, you don't raise a happy family? It's never explained what exactly he is talking about this.
Where technology is going to end up assuming more and more work is that we have to rethink and broaden what we think of as work, and then we have to come up with different and better and more human ways of valuing our own time. Because if we play out the capital efficiency race, we lose like at an epic level.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Luddites argument that we lose. No, we don't lose. If you pay out the capital efficiency, which is just mean the value creation, the productivity enhancing, the freedom to pursue your own values, to create your own values, and then to trade, we all win. The very nature of that system is win-win. And the whole idea that robots overtake us, just take it over, is just science fiction nonsense.
It's just so beyond reasonable. I want to ask you, first of all, why do you think all these mass shootings are happening to begin with?
What happened there? Sorry. This happens to me when I do this stuff.
That's
good.
Yeah, immensely valuable. So if you were to say, how many of you get excited if you were to make your community stronger, mentally healthier? People would be like, oh, that would be tremendous. It's just most people don't have the opportunity to do that kind of work.
Well, but how do you do that kind of work, and who gets to pay you for that kind of work, and where does the funds come to make you that kind of work? Again, centrally planned, government is paying you, and again, the UBI is not enough to pay you. His idea of $1,000 a month is not enough to pay you. So he never actually articulates how this mechanism works of everybody doing what they want to do, everybody doing these societally valuable activities. How does it work? We understand how socialism works, or doesn't, as the case may be. We understand how capitalism works. How does this new thing work? Blank out. No explanation.
This is the big chance we have, and we have to take it, because if we stay on this road too long, GDP and capital efficiency are going to send us flying off a cliff. And one of the things I say to people is like, look, self-driving trucks will be great for GDP. You're going to save tens of billions of dollars. It's going to be terrible for the 3.5 million truck drivers.
Is it really? I mean, again, this is the lack of imagination. Was automation in farming terrible for the people who lost jobs in farming? No. It actually increased their standard of living. They went to the cities, got better jobs, lived better life, healthier lives, and at a much higher standard of living because of the automation that drove them out. Yes, they lost their jobs. Too bad. Go find another job. And it's exactly what happened to manufacturing workers. Where are all the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs in the 1980s? Well, they got retrained. They're doing something else. And where are their kids? Their kids in Silicon Valley programming. And their standard of living all went up. But the only way to move forward, the only way to advance, is through what Schumpeter, the economist Schumpeter, called creative destruction. Yes, industries go out of business. New industries arise. Some jobs disappear. Other jobs get created. But the idea that we're heading towards some cliff where all jobs go away is just another form of the Armageddon mentality that unfortunately too many human beings have. You know, we're all going to die from global warming in 12 years. We're all going to, global warming is irreversible within 12 years and the end of the world is nigh. Or, you know, God is pissed off at us, so he's going to destroy us at the turn of the millennium. Or whatever it happens to be, there's always somebody yelling from the hilltops, the world is going to end. Millennial cults are part of our lives. Yes, Uber drivers won't have a job in 20 years. Truck drivers won't have jobs in 20 years. And you know what? They'll be new, better, more exciting, more interesting, better paying jobs available. I don't know where. If I knew where, I'd be super rich. But if you look at history, that has always been the case. And where else do we have to learn than from history and economic theory? And economic theory here is simple. Human needs are infinite. There's no limit to what we as human beings need and want. And while robots can create certain things, there's always going to be things that robots can't yet do. And a lot of those have to do with human interaction. A lot of that has to do with creativity. A lot of that has to do with things like making us laugh. There'll be more entertainers. There'll be more comedians. There'll be more personal assistants. I don't know. But, you know, I like to give the example. You know, 20 years ago, if you drove around America, once in a while you'd see a nail salon, primarily in an upper middle class or high class neighborhood where rich people would go and have their nails done. Like 20, 30 years ago, nobody got their nails done, right? It was an exclusive thing of the rich. Today, in California, there's not a strip mall that doesn't have a nail salon. Thousands and thousands and thousands of women in California work doing whatever they do in a nail salon. Never been in one, and I don't know what they do. But, you know, manicures, pedicures, thousands and thousands. Now, if you'd ask me, what are all these Asian immigrants going to do? Well, I mean, most of them are Vietnamese women in California, in Southern California at least. What are they going to do when they come here? There are not enough jobs. Nobody would have imagined this would be a job. So, I don't know what the jobs of the future are going to be. Manual or non-manual. All I know is that history suggests, and economic theory, markets suggest, that given the needs of human being always expand, always grow. We always want more, need more, desire more. And people are going to have to produce. And individuals have this amazing ability to create stuff that nobody else could have imagined is possible. And they're going to people are going to have to do that. We're going to have many more entrepreneurs, because to actually bring your idea into reality will become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, because you'll have machines doing it. So many people who today are workers are going to become entrepreneurs. And there's just an ever increasing number of opportunities, of jobs, of wealth for people to access. So no, I don't buy any of this.
The 7 million Americans who work in truck stops, motels, and diners around the country waiting for the truckers to get out and have a meal.
What did all those people do before they were trucks? Oh, they were farmers.
So you guys run a business, and so you have measurements you look at all the time. It's around like how engaged viewers are, like how many people are clicking on things. We need the right measurements for our society. We made up GDP on...
Who is we? I don't need the right measurements for society. I don't give a damn about the right measurements for society. The only measurements that I care about are my own well-being. Am I happy? Am I not? Is my bank account growing or is it shrinking? Can I afford the stuff that I want or can't I? How much time am I spending with my kids or my job or with my wife or the different... Those are the measures that matter. Society, who cares about the measures of society? I don't, for that matter, don't really care about GDP. I care about my GDP. I care about how much wealth I have. I don't care that much about how much wealth you have. Now, I want to be in a place that's healthy and growing, and the economy's growing, and people are flourishing, and people are succeeding, because that's more fun to live in a place like that. But society measurements of well-being are bogus, because there is no such thing as societal measures of well-being. Only individuals have well-being. Society is just a collection of individuals. And different individuals in different phases of their life have different measures of well-being. When you're young, the measures of well-being are different than when you're older. When you're poor, your measures of well-being are different than when you're wealthy. So we want to aggregate all this and somehow have a central planner, have a measure of well-being? No, the only measure of well-being that the government should concern itself is how free are its citizens? How well are the rights, the freedoms of its citizens protected? And the measures of well-being for that are things like how much crime is there? The measures of well-being for that are, how much regulations and controls are there? That's the only measure of well-being that the government needs to be involved in. To what extent are people free to pursue their own values? Free of what? Free of coercion, free of force, free of coercion from the government. And if the government identifies somewhere where it's coercing people and interfering in their freedoms, interfering in their lives, it should stop. Do away with the laws, regulations, controls. And if other people are interfering in my freedoms, then the government should arrest them. That's it. But there are no other societal measures of well-being. Only individuals can feel well-being.
Years ago, and even the inventor said this is a terrible measurement of national well-being and we should never use it as that. That was 100 years ago.
Right.
And so here we are just still following it 100 years later, being like, oh, GDP is going to tell us how we're doing.
By the way, I did a whole talk on, you can find it on my YouTube channel, about collectivism in economics, which talks about GDP and all these economic measures of well-being. And yeah, they're all collectivistic nonsense. I'm not for measuring well-being in any kind of collectivistic way, and I'm certainly not for measuring it in GDP. Most economic numbers are driven by a collectivistic view of the world rather than an individualist view of the world, which just looks at are individuals free, and an individuals, do they have the freedom, the ability to pursue their happiness? That's it.
We need to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an idea for what that new metric might look like? I mean, what is it?
Yes, I do.
Not.
So I call it the American
It's not a
Scorecard,
metric.
and it keeps GDP as one data point, but it integrates health and life expectancy, mental health and freedom from substance abuse, childhood education and success rates, environmental quality. And we have numbers for these things. And so we can integrate them into our economic measurements. And then at the State of the Union every year as president, I will actually present the scorecard and say, as an example, 8 Americans are dying of drug overdoses every hour. That's terrible and unconscionable. So we're going to get that down by 50% over the next.
So we're going to get that down by 50% over the next few years by limiting somebody's freedom, by taking stuff away from somebody, because we don't actually care about individual freedom. We don't actually care about individual rights. What we care about is these social metrics. And then if we have to sacrifice some, I talked about this idea of sacrifice when I criticized socialism yesterday. If we have to sacrifice some for the benefit of others, so be it. But we got our metrics down. We got the number we were going for. This is cool, right? Tell with freedom. Tell with what's really important. Tell with the job that government is actually supposed to do. That's unimportant.
Years, and here's how we're going to do it. And then if individuals or companies or organizations put resources to work to move society in that direction, then they actually get rewarded economically. Because right now the problem is that all the economic rewards cut in this direction.
By whom?
And then all of the helping people rewards cut the other direction.
Right.
Now, by the way, some of you on the chat, I track the chat a little bit, so there's a bunch of you who are new. Let me just be clear. I am not arguing in support of the existing system. The existing system we have in the United States is not capitalism, it's cronyism. The existing system we have in the United States is a mixed economy. There's no capitalism in the U.S. The existing system in the United States has politicians from left and right who are ignorant of the principles on which this country was founded and of the principles of economics and political theory that could make it great again. A president is, in my view, an incompetent buffoon, but so are the Democrats. So don't argue with me that the status quo is lousy. Yeah, I agree with the status quo is lousy. But Andrew Yang's policies are basically to increasing all the bad things that exist in our world today. Increase the statism, increase governmental control, increase governmental oversight over our life. We have parameters over all these kind of things that relate to our life, and then the government is going to step in and manipulate us to do what Andrew wants us to do, rather than leaving us free to live our lives as we see fit, which is not the state today.
So what would an incentive look like for, let's say, Amazon to, how could Amazon contribute, for example, to an issue like that?
How can Amazon contribute? Now think about that. Think about the question and think about the answer. How can Amazon contribute? Really? I don't know about you, but Amazon has contributed an enormous amount to my life already. Why does it need to contribute anymore? It's changed my life dramatically for the better. The things I can do online today because of Amazon is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I'm being compared to InfoWars. Have I stated any conspiracy theories here? The difference between me and InfoWars is I actually advocate for truth and freedom and rights, but you can't tell the difference. That's truly what's shocking, is that you can't tell the difference. What is Amazon? I mean, InfoWars hates Amazon, just like the Trump hates Amazon, and Bernie hates Amazon, and Andrew Yang hates Amazon. Every single mainstream politician in the world today hates Amazon. I love Amazon. I think Amazon is God's gift to mankind. It's not God because God doesn't exist, but it's Jeff Bezos' gift to mankind. Amazon has changed our lives. It's made our life richer, better. I mean, I don't go to the mall to shop, which gives me more time to do this fun stuff that I enjoy doing. I don't have to go drive and be in traffic and walk around a stupid mall and do all the stupid things that people do in malls. I hate malls. I hate shopping. I can go online, look for the stuff I need, buy the stuff I need, and it shows up on my door sometimes the next day. Actually, when I was in California, it shows up the same day. I mean, wow. Shockingly amazing. Same day. Think about all the jobs at the delivery. Think of all the jobs in the warehouses. Think of all the jobs of the companies that make the stuff that Amazon sells. Amazon is the most heroic company, most company that has changed our life more than probably any other company in the world, and yet we demonize them. Why? Because they haven't paid their taxes. Who cares? They've made my life so much better. I don't resent them. I think they're fantastic because they benefited my life and your life as individuals. Yeah, some jobs are getting automated away, and other jobs will come and replace them because jobs are being automated away since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. We've been automating away jobs for 230 years. Literally, 230 years of automating jobs away, and still, more people today work than ever in all of human history in productive activities for trade.
Well, the first thing we do is we take our fair share of every Amazon sale and distribute it to
We take our fair share. What does that mean?
Amazon has a choice about. It was
Yeah.
just like, hey, guess what? This is the new way.
Right.
And
Yeah, they don't have a choice about it because they're forced. It's
I
a
will say-
tax. They don't have a choice about taxes. We come to a gun and we take 10% of everything they sell. Now, who pays for VAT? What he's proposing here is a 10% VAT, which is a consumption tax. Who pays consumption taxes? Who pays them? All you have to do is go to Europe and see what gas prices cost. They have very high gasoline taxes. The oil company doesn't pay the gasoline taxes. The gas station doesn't pay the gasoline taxes. Who pays the gasoline taxes? Well, the consumer does. Who pays for VAT? The consumer pays for VAT. Who pays for sales taxes? Consumers pays for sales taxes. Now, I'm actually for sales taxes if we could get rid of all income taxes. I think they're better for the economy. I think consumption taxes is a healthier way to tax than an income tax. But 10% sales tax, which is what he's proposing, a VAT, a sales tax paid in a sense by the corporation rather than at the point of sale, is just a price increase on all Americans of 10%. So yeah, that's great. You've taxed Amazon. That makes you feel good. It makes all of you think, ooh, this is virtuous because we've gone after that big evil corporation. But what you've actually done is raise the cost of living of Americans by 10%. By 10%. And then you give people a UBI to compensate for the fact that you just increased the cost of living by 10%. Really, really smart economics.
supported by hundreds of techies who are down with this plan because
Yeah,
they're not
techies who
all
know
bad.
nothing about
they're
economics.
just like, look, I'm doing my job, and like I get that there are these problems. So that's number
Yeah.
one. But go ahead.
The VAT that you put on Amazon, theoretically, what percentage are we talking about of their revenue?
Well, my proposal is a 10% VAT, which is
It's none of their revenue. Their revenue would not go down one iota. One iota. It's a tax on our consumption. Our prices would go up 10%. I mean, H3 knows no economics, unfortunately. None. Zero. Zilch.
level.
Oh, wow. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I never got
Yeah.
that stat. I'm just curious. So essentially, 10% of all the sales Amazon's making becomes a tax to the government,
Yeah, and then
which
they
is
get
we all
still pretty
pay.
low.
in the
Right.
scheme, right?
If you're looking at 10%,
Oh, yeah,
I'd
they're
love to
paying
pay
zero now.
10%.
By the way, it's a regressive tax. Not that I'm against regressive taxes, but it's a regressive tax because poor people consume a bigger share of their income than rich people. Rich people actually consume very little. So poor people pay a disproportionate amount of this tax. Just a fact. Yeah, those of you curious, I have a PhD in finance. I know a little bit about economics.
Rich as hell if I only pay 10%.
Yes.
Love to go on his podcast.
So
and teach
that's
him.
The first move is you say, look, guess what? American people now get a slice. It'll help you too. Everyone's happy. And I have hundreds of techies who are behind me and think that this is the best path forward.
You think Jeff Bezos will be down with that, or they'll lobby against it?
Well, I know that Jeff Bezos knows that his number one obstacle now is the U.S. government.
Isn't that scary? Isn't that scary? Don't you think you should really be scared when the most successful businessman in America today, the most successful businessman, one of the most successful businessmen in all world history, his biggest challenge is not competitors, his biggest challenge is not the market is shifting on it, his biggest challenge is not automation or new technologies, his biggest challenge is government control, government regulations, government wanting to break him up. Government should be protecting him, not a danger to him. The job of government is to protect Bezos, not to endanger Bezos.
So he has to figure out how to manage that. It is no mystery. He bought the Washington Post. He moved Amazon's HQ2 mostly to the DC area. He bought this giant home there. He gets it. He's like, okay, the number one thing that could stand in my way of getting to do whatever I want is the federal government waking up. And so let me try and pat it back to sleep.
Okay, I put him up to 1.5 times speed, not because out of disrespect for him, but because we're running out of time. And the only way we can, he speaks very slowly, and this is meandering. So I'm speeding it up, not to make fun of him. But notice keeps reinforcing this idea that Bezos should be afraid of the U.S. government.
It's almost unimaginable that one human being could be so powerful, but also so hell-bent on singularly affecting the economy.
But he's single-mindedly hell-bent on affecting the economy. How? By providing us with values, by making our lives easier, by making our lives better. Isn't it amazing? I mean, in any other world in which we were half rational, Jeff Bezos would be a national hero. We would be erecting statues for him. It is truly unbelievable that we condemn the people who make the biggest difference in our lives, the people who have raised our standard of living the most, are the ones we condemn the most. This has a long history going back to the so-called robber barons who made this country, and yet we condemn them.
For his own benefit. How could you, as one human,
for his own benefit.
Inconceivable, isn't
Isn't
it,
that
to get inside
great?
his head and to think, just to keep gathering and gaining for oneself at the benefit of an entire country. He must not see it that way, surely.
Oh, he doesn't see it that way. I mean, he's spending billions on rockets to Mars, and for him, he thinks the wealth is much better in my hands than in the government's hands.
He's right.
Because I'm going to advance the species. I'm going to get us to Mars. What the hell would the government do with this money? The government.
He's right, but he's not. His motivation is not just that. His motivation is it's fun, and he earned this money.
Do something stupid with it. So that's one perspective. It's his perspective. We can't take that perspective all the way to the bank if we're the American people. And then it's not just Jeff. It's like the Jeff of industry YZ.
There's a lot of Jeffs.
But we do take it to the bank because we benefit enormously from the Jeff XYZ.
Yeah. So the number one big move is we say, look, we get a slice, and that's going to make society stronger and healthier. But number two, if they do something, because right now big companies
We take a slice from again. We don't take a slice from Jeff Bezos. We take a slice from every consumer who buys things from Amazon. They're the ones whose wealth is getting taken away. All right.
for good PR, and then they say to people, look, it was good PR. So what we say to them is, hey, Amazon, if you can demonstrate that you're making children in this community stronger, or improving the mental health of this group of people, or helping these ex-convicts reintegrate into society, or cleaning up the environment, and we can document that, then we can give you a tax credit for that.
Who's going to decide all that? Who is we? And how much tax credit? By what standard? Again, more and more power to the government. More and more centralizing power. More and more power to the state, a bigger and bigger state. That's what Andrew Yang represents. I mean, originally I thought he was just about UBI, but no, he is about a complete takeover of our lives and our economy by the state. He is a real socialist. A real socialist. In much more refined and sophisticated way than Bernie or any of these others.
So
How
that's
do you
why.
get someone a tax credit who's paying zero?
Well, I know in this case, well, obviously we'd get them off the zero tax bracket. They can carry over the tax credit. I mean, they're different ways. Create carrots and sticks for these companies. The trick right now, though, is to try and align their well-being with ours, because right now their bottom line is like goal 1, 2, and 3.
But their bottom line is our well-being. The only way companies make money is by selling us products that we want at the price that we're willing to pay, which means our lives are getting better at the same time as they're making money. It's the only way to make money.
They're paying zero taxes is also part of their job. One of the things I say is, look, it's Amazon's job to try and pay as little in taxes as possible. It's our job to make it impossible for them to pay zero in taxes over and over
The
again.
game is rigged right now. They don't have a strong competitor.
They don't have a strong competitor.
Yeah. But we're talking about gun control.
All right, we're gonna skip this. We're gonna go to the discussion of UBI. This is taking much longer than I thought. I don't know why that surprises me, because it always takes longer than I think. I'm gonna put this new clip on at 1.5, maybe 1.25. Maybe 1.5 was a little bit too much. Let's put a 1.25. And let's play. Okay, we're getting into UBI now. So Andrew Young wants to restructure all our jobs and wants the government to have. You know what it reminds me of? Actually, it just hit me now. What it actually reminds me of is China. It reminds me of the idea of social credits. The government will track all of our behavior and determine what our social credits are. Oh, you raise a family, you get 5 social credits. You raise a good family, you get 20 social credits. And if you get 20 social credits, then we will give you more money than if you got 5 social credits. It did surprise. So Brett asked me if it surprised me that Yang was a socialist. I guess it did. I've just seen clips of his before and thought, okay, he sounds intelligent. He's an entrepreneur in the past, and he's not like Swami and like so many of the socialists. And in many ways, he's more dangerous than socialists because he comes across so intelligently and so articulately and so as if he knows what he's talking about in economics and all these things. But he's a communist. He's not a communist. He's a China type socialist. He wants social credits. That's what he really wants. He wants Amazon to get social credits. He said it. If you take care of poor and starving kids, if you help the homeless, if you help the environment, if you do all these 75 things, we'll give you tax credits. Well, that's social credits. And in order to give us social credits, what must the government have? It must have massive amounts of information about us. So, yeah, China does it negative social credits, but I assume negative implies a positive. That is, if you don't accumulate the negatives, you're positive and you get good stuff happen to you. Andrew focuses on the positive social credits, at least that's what we hear from him. Although, my guess is that you get negative social credits for bad behavior. I'm sure there are negative social credits in his system. But yeah, it just hit me. He's basically a socialist, a sophisticated socialist, who, because he's technology savvy, would use technology to measure how good we are for society and give us or take from us based on the social credit we had. Wow, he's even worse than I thought he was before I did the show. I love these shows because I learned so much from me talking and from the questions you ask.
Of your campaign. The universal basic income, the freedom dividend, as you call it. You say it tested better with Republicans.
With the word freedom in it, yes.
Did you do, what is that? You did actual, like,
funny.
test, like focus groups?
Yeah, well, it was market sampling and online. So we tested a bunch of names: Social Security for all, universal basic income, obviously, opportunity dividend, prosperity dividend, freedom dividend was the clear winner.
It's a beautiful American phrase. I could see, like, the flag waving in the wind and the ball.
Yeah, it's a freedom dividend. We're going to violate your freedom in order to get it, to give it to you. We're going to destroy freedom in order for you to have a freedom dividend. It's
Screaming, the freedom dividend.
so awesome.
Yeah, who could be against the freedom dividend? You'd have to be some kind of
Yes.
jerk.
So,
Let's take a word that it contradicts everything we do and use it because it sells well.
can you explain what universal basic income is for those people who don't know? Yeah.
Universal basic income is a policy where everyone in a society, in this case every U.S. citizen, gets a certain amount of money to meet your basic needs, no questions asked. So my proposal of freedom dividend would be $1,000 a month in the hands of every American adult, starting at age 18 until the day you die, $12,000 a year.
So remember, we're going to increase taxes on basically everybody. So we're going to increase your consumption tax. You can increase prices by 10% across the board. And in exchange for that, we're going to give every U.S. citizen working or not working, good for society or not good for society, every American, anybody who has a citizenship, $12,000 a year. $12,000 a year. They can do anything they want with that money. Now, he never says, and I don't think he says it later, that this is going to replace all the other welfare programs. He doesn't. So all the other welfare programs are still going to exist. The food stamps and the straight welfare and everything else is going to exist. And on top of that, people are going to get $12,000 a year. I mean, I am mildly sympathetic to the idea of doing away with all of welfare. More than that, doing away with Social Security, doing away with Medicare, doing away with Medicaid, doing away with public education, and replacing all of that with a universal basic income. It would have to be more than $12,000, but something like that, right? And then, over 2 generations, every year making it a little bit lower until it goes to 0 and we actually have a real free capitalist society. But I am sympathetic to the idea of replacing everything we have in terms of government programs, getting rid of all the bureaucrats, all the middlemen, all the leeches who manage these programs, who destroy wealth in the process, and replacing all of them, all of it, with a UBI. And that would be a phase in moving towards complete freedom where the government subsidized nobody, gave nobody anything. But that it would have to include healthcare. You privatize healthcare completely and then give every American, I don't know, X number of dollars to cover the healthcare and education and everything else based on this UBI concept. But that's not what he's talking about. He wants to raise prices in the economy by 10% and then give everybody $12,000 on top of the corrupt, ineffective, destructive, horrible welfare system we have today. And he wants to give people more of an incentive not to work. They don't have enough of an incentive today with all the welfare we give them not to work. We're going to load up on that a bigger incentive not to work. I mean, the thing I like about Yang is that he looks and talks and behaves like a nerd. But he's a dangerous nerd. He's a socialist nerd. He's a statist nerd. He's a totalitarian nerd.
Seems dramatic, but this has actually been proposed and almost passed in America any number of times over the years. Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of the country. Martin Luther King was fighting for it 1967 when he was assassinated in 1968. Milton Friedman, 1,000 economists endorsed it in the 70s. It passed the U.S. House of Representatives and the Congress twice in 71, so it came this close to being law, yeah.
What was the amount they were prepared to give out then?
It was about $12,000
I'm going to skip
ahead.
a little forward.
Yeah. Colorado and other parts of the country started giving them cash and then following them around to see what happened.
Really?
That's so interesting.
Yeah, could you
Did
imagine?
other Americans know about that?
Yeah. I mean, this was
It's like a lottery?
This
was
is in
all
the
the rage
1970s.
in the.
We're going to skip again.
And so the American people were looking around being like, hey, like maybe we can do some other great stuff. And Martin Luther King was saying like we should do this, and then it was endorsed by a lot of people, and then it passed the U.S. House of Representatives. So during that time, Congress, when they were looking to pass it, they said, well, we should just give people money to see what happens.
And you said the results were good.
The results were really good. You
So
saw
what
it.
happened?
And unfortunately, it didn't pass. Fortunately, it didn't pass because, man, load up one of these UBIs on top of everything else we have in this country, on top of the welfare state, the Johnson welfare state, and the country would be in 100 times worse situation than it is today already.
So it passed the U.S. House of Representatives twice, and then it got stalled in the Senate because Democrats in the Senate wanted an even higher income threshold. I shit you not. And someone who worked in Democratic politics at that time said it was the biggest mistake we ever made, which is just sign
Oh
that.
my God.
And then the movement was lost, and then Nixon gets impeached, and then like the pendulum swings. You wind up with Reagan, and then the whole moment was lost. But it just gives you a sense of how mainstream this idea was. How it came this close to being law. It became a law in Alaska, and not that long afterwards. And early 80s. And so it's not like a far out idea. And that's one of the things that
It's a very far-out idea, particularly the way you're proposing it, which is the worst kind of UBI imaginable. And yes, somebody says Elon Musk, billionaire, Mark Zuckerberg support Yang. Even Obama had a speech. Well, that's the ultimate endorsement, right? I mean, these guys don't know anything about politics. They don't know anything about economics. They don't know anything about politics, about freedom, about what makes society successful, what makes economy successful. They have no idea what the pursuit of happiness entails. They're not philosophers. They're great businessmen. I don't care the great businessmen have endorsed him. His ideas are terrible. All right, I think we're gonna let's do a little bit more, and then we're gonna cut it off. And
I'm like the quote unquote futurist
that you've been sending.
presidential candidate being like, oh, crazy $1,000 a month. It's like this was mainstream American political wisdom in the 60s and 70s. What the hell happened to us? Where now we think it's nuts.
We got
like,
smart.
It's like,
Well, now we need it even more than we did then, right?
yes, now we actually
Now
need
it's a
it.
necessity.
And when you start thinking about it for a minute, like it becomes common sense, but like it gets caricatured in various ways, even though it actually, again, is like a deeply American and mainstream idea. And now, like Barack Obama came out and said we should talk about it. Elon Musk and like Zuckerberg and others are like we should totally do it. Like it's actually, in many ways, this conversation is definitely overdue. In my opinion, this should have been passed years ago.
I mean, again, there are proposals for UBI that make a lot more sense than Yang's, and I'm really disappointed that this is what he comes up with.
Certainly an exciting time where your campaign is growing. It's resonating. I mean, what an exciting thing it would be for the United States.
I can do the math. I'm very good at math. I can't do that math.
That's complicated.
It's very.
So you
As
don't
will be.
Okay. How'd you get interested in UBI? When was there a moment where you're like, oh, this is the solution? I mean,
So I ran this nonprofit that I'd started, Venture for America, that our job was to create American jobs. So we helped create about 3,000 American jobs over 7 years, and I got a bunch of medals and awards, and like everyone be like, oh, yay, like well done. So during that time, I was obviously very interested in jobs and the future of work. So I would read various books about the future of work, and some of the books about the future of work were like, hey, guess what, robots are coming, and we should really start looking into what that's going to mean.
future of work is there's no work.
Yeah. And so a lot of them
So
were
bogus.
saying we should do a universal basic income. And then when I read these books, I said, oh yeah, that makes sense. We should totally do that. and then in 2015, I read another book called Raising the Floor by a guy named Andy Stern, who used to run the biggest labor union in the U.S. And he said the future of labor is no labor, we're screwed, and we should move to a dividend. And so I read that, and I was like, wow, it's not just the tech guys, it's the labor leader saying we need to do this. So I became convinced at that point, and became very passionate about it during that period.
So I think this is a misconception that a lot of people have, or at least an opinion. The intention of universal basic income is not to enable people not to work.
Yeah,
is it?
exactly.
Right.
That's right.
Right. I mean, because $1,000 a month, first of all, not enough money for most people, and second of all, I think that a lot of people derive purpose in their life from their work. So, with like in 50 years when there's no jobs, and or let's say 10 years, someone can't find a job, they're getting $1,000 a month. What do you do when that's not enough?
Good question.
So first, could not agree more that one of the biggest misconceptions is that universal basic income or the freedom dividend is somehow going to reduce work. Because number one, it recognizes a lot of the work that we're already doing that does not get recognized. And it would be an enormous catalyst to entrepreneurship, arts, creativity, nurturing, caregiving, all these things we kind of want to do that the market says it's not worth enough for you to make a living at it, so don't do it. So it would create and recognize and reward a lot of the work that we're trying to do. Is number one. Number two, if you imagine what $12,000 a year would mean in a town of, let's call it 100,000 adults, you're talking about another $12 million. Like,
Okay, this is Keynesian economics on steroids. It's not Keynesian because it's so non-economics. Okay, so people will have more money, and therefore people will have more money to spend. And if they have more money to spend, the economy does well. This is bad economics. Somebody should really talk to Yang about this is not how things work.
yeah, that's coming through that town, and so that doesn't just help the individuals.
Where does that money come from? So that if that money is not new money that's being printed, because he hasn't talked about printing money, he's been pretty good about that. If that money is just being taxed, then all this is doing is taking that $1 billion or whatever that number was from one pocket and putting it into another pocket. There's nothing here There's nothing that creates economic activity. Handing people checks doesn't create economic activity. Stimulus doesn't create economic activity. Economic activity is created when the Elon Musk, the Steve Jobs, the Bill Gateses of the world go out, and the Rockefellers of the world, the Carnegies of the world, go out and build businesses and create new values and create something new and create wealth. Wealth doesn't get created through people spending money. The economy doesn't grow, well-being doesn't grow, standard of living doesn't grow through spending. All of that grows through producing, creating, building, making. And when you're taking the money, stealing the money from the producers, from the creators, from the builders, and give it to people to consume, you're not making the economy better, you're making it worse. This is one of the most ancient fallacies in economics. UBI does not increase economic activity because people spend more money. Because you're taking it out of the pockets of people who would invest it, who would build with it, who would create with it, who would make with it. Production creates economic activity. Investment creates economic activity. Savings create long-term economic activity. Consumption is destruction. You consume an ice cream, it's gone. You buy a car, you wear it down by driving it. But to produce, to create, to build, to make, and that's what you denigrate. That's what you put down. I mean, this is real fallacy, economic fallacy 101.
Supercharges the local businesses, it supercharges the local nonprofits, it supercharges the volunteer organizations. And so when you say, what do the jobs of the future look like? It could be that 20 years from now, it's very normal to work in a job that just helps make other people stronger, healthier, mentally healthier.
I think that's absolutely right. I think most of the jobs of the future are jobs that help other people directly in ways that robots and computers cannot. I think that's right. But you don't need government to create those jobs. You don't need these mechanisms. You don't need UBI to create these jobs. All you need is to let capitalism play out. And people gravitate, for example, jobs that give people the opportunity to go and do people's nails and help them and talk to them and become their psychological advisors. I don't know what happens in these nail salons, right? But those and more sophisticated versions of those are the jobs of the future. But I don't need Yang to create those jobs or to bring about those jobs as president. What I need is just the government to step out of the way and let the market evolve. And the market will evolve if those are the jobs that create the value. Now, Cook says, he's right. Why only give people $1,000 a month? Why not give them $1 million a month? I mean, if it really enhances the economy, if it's good for the economy, why? It's like the minimum wage. If we're going to make the minimum wage $15 and that's supposedly a good thing, why not make the minimum wage $100? The whole thing is illogical. It doesn't make any sense. Now, again, I can imagine a UBI that replaces all government services. Now, it could be, somebody in the chat said, that actually Andrew Young believes that if you get welfare, you don't get UBI. I don't see that anywhere in the interview. I haven't seen that. I read the stuff in UBI that he put on the website. I didn't see it there. I mean, maybe it's somewhere, but he's not making a big deal out of it, and I can understand why he's not making a big deal out of it, because it's not very politically palatable if you do that. But UBI is not a solution. There's no problem that it's trying to solve. The only reason to have a UBI is to get rid of welfare. The only reason to have UBI is to get rid of the, 3,000 different welfare programs that exist today in the United States. Really, I mean, and the inefficiencies and a massive number of people who work delivering those services could be all eliminated by going to a UBI system. And, okay, but I don't hear that. I don't hear that as a reason. I don't hear that as a explanation. Judging this guy from an interview. He's out there giving the interviews. All right. We'll do a few more minutes and then we'll stop.
Things that right now there's no market demand for, there could actually be massive opportunities in. The problem right now is that, again, we're following capital efficiency, and it says these things are worth zero.
But they're worth zero because they're worth zero today. And maybe they won't be worth zero in the future. But that's for future individuals to determine in the future, not for you to determine for them. How can you decide? This goes back to my discussion of socialism yesterday. How can you decide what's of value to me?
So the big change we have to make is if we change the measurements and say these things are actually worth like a lot,
Yeah.
then that's the
Selling those are good jobs to have.
Yeah.
Somebody on the chat said that, they know that what is valuable to me is getting my material stuff the next day. No, if you listen to what I actually said, first of all, yes, I love material stuff, and getting it the next day or the same day is amazing. But what really the value to me is the time saving that comes from getting it that day, the time saving that comes from not having to go to the mall, and the spiritual values I can therefore pursue. The music I can listen to, the movies I can see, the fun I can have with my wife, with my friends, instead of going and shopping. I mean, you have a really narrow perspective on life if all you think about is the material. But what Amazon does is it enhances our ability to enjoy the spiritual because it gives us more time and it saves us more money so that we can go out and enjoy the things that are the most value to us. All right. All right, guys. So that's gonna be that. We've got a bunch of questions here, so I'm gonna try to go through the questions. Okay, so this one guy Yang saying he wants to give every man, woman, child $10,000 is nonsense, but he's not Bernie Sanders. True, he's not Bernie Sanders. He might be more dangerous than Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is kind of ridiculous. Yang is kind of a geeky, smart, intelligent guy who I think that's what makes him. What makes him dangerous. And this idea of what social value you're creating and how do we compensate you for that social value. Again, the question is, who compensates? If it's the market, like some of what he said implied, then great. Then that's what capitalism will produce. You don't have to do anything. We don't need UBI for that. Is Yang advocating for UBI through the means of fear? Well, of course. I mean, this is what all statists do. All people. I'd love to debate Andrew Yang. So anytime, any place. Well, not anytime, any place. Has to fit conveniently. But yeah, I'd love to debate Andrew Yang. But of course he's using fear. That's what all statists do. I mean, Trump does it. He wants us to fear immigrants. He wants us to fear the Chinese. He wants us to fear, what's his name, Jeff Bezos. He wants us to fear people, fear, of course, Google and Facebook and Twitter and all the social media. So Trump uses fear. Bernie Sanders uses fear. Elizabeth Warren wants us to fear Wall Street, and therefore she wants to regulate every aspect of the banking industry. And Andrew Yang wants us to fear that we're all going to lose our jobs, that automation is coming and there'll be no more jobs. And therefore the only way to create these new jobs he imagines, because he doesn't really believe that all jobs are going away. He just wants us to engage in different jobs than what we are today. And he believes the only way to get there is through UBI, which is complete nonsense. But he has to first make us afraid. People don't give up their freedom unless they're afraid. I think that's almost always true. People don't give up their freedom unless they're afraid. So Andrew Yang must make us afraid in order to convince us to give up our freedom, to raise our cost of living, to impose a 10% tax on all our consumption. This guy says, screw employment. I want liberty. No tax parasitic public sector. The option of self-sufficiency. One man, 1 acre. You'll let me do this? Yeah, you can do it. I have no problem. I don't know if Andrew Yang will do it, but I would let you do it. The beauty of capitalism is you can do what you want as long as you're not hurting other people. You buy a plot of land, You grow your own vegetables. You can live there as long as you're not shooting anybody else, as long as you're not interfering in other people's lives through the use of force. You can live whatever life you want. I mean, I even say you can be a socialist under capitalism. You get your friends together. You go live in a commune. To each according to his means, from each according to his ability. You can live pathetic, miserable lives in your little commune. You can even have UBI. Get your friends together. As long as you do voluntarily, you can all put money into a pot, and then you can all withdraw the same amount every month. You can do whatever you want under freedom. That's part of the beauty of freedom. Everybody who has lousy ideas gets to try them out and suffer the consequences. Nobody bails you out. You can't use force to bail yourself out. You can't use force to bail yourself out. So yeah, you want to be self-sufficient? Go be self-sufficient under capitalism. I don't want to be self-sufficient. I love specialization. I love the division of labor. I love the, Amazon and Google and, and Apple and all these people who specialize and provide me with great, fantastic products. That's fantastic. Right. All right, this guy says, UBI is still socialism with an incremental tweak. I understand it's immoral, but as a step away from the present system, better, worse, same. As I said, if it is all-encompassing, if it truly replaces all other welfare, that is, we do away with all other welfare, and I would go a step further, all other government medical, so Medicare and Medicaid, if it truly, I would even replace public education, right? Give people a check, make it $2,000 instead of $1,000, and get rid of all that, so now they can afford to send their kids to private school as well. And, whatever the amount of money is, if it replaced all of that, then yes, I think it would be a step away from the current system. And then you could start modifying it. You could, modifying in the sense of moderating it. Start with $3,000 a month, and then go to $2,900, $2,800, and ultimately to zero. That would be the way I would do things. But UBI on top of the existing system is worse. It's like a sales tax on top of income taxes, which is what he's proposing. I mean, I'm fine with replacing the income tax with the sales tax. Income taxes are terrible, terrible. All taxes are bad, but income taxes are particularly bad because they punish your productivity. They punish your work. What you tax, you get less of. What you subsidize, you get more of. So if what you want is not to tax production. If you're going to tax anything, you should tax consumption. And that's the contradiction in what he said. On the one hand, he believes consumption drives the economy. On the other hand, he wants to tax consumption through a VAT. But he's wrong on both counts. Well, he's wrong on one count. Consumption doesn't drive the economy. Production drives the economy. Just think of it this way. I've said this before on the show. For every act of consumption, 2 acts of production have to occur. One, in order to consume, you have to produce. And even if you get a handout from the government, somebody had to produce. So, in order to consume, you have to first produce. That's what people pay you for, production. And then you take that money and you use it to consume. And in order for you to consume, somebody has to produce something for you to consume. So for every act of consumption, there are 2 acts of production. Your personal production and the production of whoever produced the product that you're purchasing. So the idea that consumption drives the economy is just economic ignorance. Economic stupidity, really. So it's worse, UBI is worse if it's overlaid over the existing system. It could be an improvement. It could be a step towards liberty if 2 things happen. One, it is replacing all welfare and all government involvement, and you understand that it's going to be reduced over time. All I want is to be Maserati con something. I am terrified that I might not be allowed in Israel. It makes me cry at night. I want to be Jewish more than anything in the whole wide world. It's not an act. I don't know what you're talking about. But if you want to be Jewish, go to a rabbi and get yourself circumcised and go and do all the things that require you to become Jewish, and then they'll accept you into the tribe, and you can do everything you need in order to be a Jew. You know, it's hard. You know, Jews are pretty. Jews are pretty selective in who they take in, but it's possible. And, you can have my spot. I've given up being a Jewish a long time ago. You can have my spot, right? What a bizarre question. Why do I get questions like that? All right, here's the Kid Rock question. Kid Rock said in one of his songs that Ayn Rand couldn't stand me, so she banned me. Why did Ayn Rand ban Kid Rock? I don't know. Well, first, I'm sure Ayn Rand didn't ban Kid Rock. I guess the references to him thinking he would have been banned. I don't know. Why are you asking me silly questions? Really? I mean, Cook, I don't even really know who. I mean, I know this is going to show my ignorance. I don't know who Kid Rock is. And I know that Ayn Rand didn't ban him. So it's just lyrics in a song. Why he said it, you'll have to. I think the question should be applied to Kid Rock. You should ask him. All right, this is a question from yesterday I did not get to, a super chat question from yesterday. Who are some good people to listen to for insight, advice on our current economic climate and where we are heading economically in the near future? I already listened to Peter Schiff, but who else do you believe has good insight? I think this is very difficult because I don't think very many people have good insight. I think it's rare. I think Peter Schiff is interesting, but he's been warning of an imminent collapse for a long time, and it hasn't happened. So it's difficult to make investment advice based on Peter Schiff's ideas because I would have been short the market through one of the largest increases in stock market valuations in history, and I would have lost a lot of money. So I think it's worthwhile. I definitely think it's worthwhile listening to Peter Schiff, but I would be cautious about investment advice. Yesterday I gave the recommendation of following Dan Mitchell. Dan Mitchell's not an investment guy, but he gives you a lot of data on the state of the U.S. and the global economy, which I think is valuable and worthwhile. I think reading people like Don Boudreaux, the George Mason economist, and other economists from George Mason is kind of what you'd call libertarian economist is worthwhile. And I would definitely read Austrian economics. First of all, I educate myself in economics, which means reading von Mises, reading Hayek, reading Israel Kurzner, somebody you might not have heard of, Israel Kurzner, who is an Austrian economist. He's 90-something years old, who used to teach, or maybe still teaches, at New York University. But I don't know who to listen to for investment advice. I mean, I don't take anybody's investment advice. I think it's very difficult. It's very difficult. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of the economy today and how it works and how it runs and what happens. And of course, what you should do is subscribe to my channel, and once in a while I'll talk about this stuff. Jonathan Hoenig has a podcast, I think. Jonathan Hoenig has a podcast or a YouTube thing on objective investing that he does, I think once a week. I'm not sure, but periodically. I have a course called Objective Investing that you can get from the Ayn Rand bookstore. It's old. It's from the late 1990s, but I think it's still valuable. I don't stand by everything I said back then, but I think there's a lot of value in that if you're interested in investing. And then let's see. As economists go, Walter Williams is excellent. Thomas Sowell is very good. There are a lot of good economists out there, right? Thank you, Min, for the support. Let's see. Somebody asked me if I've watched Hombre, the movie. I've downloaded it from iTunes. I will be watching it. I will be watching. I downloaded it and one of my favorite westerns, because Hombre is a western, The Unconquered. So I will review both those movies on a future show. Hombre with Paul Newman, and The Unconquered, which with Audrey Hepburn, which Unconquered is one of my favorite all-time movies, westerns and movies generally. All right, I think we're done. Another show tomorrow. Not sure what I'm going to cover tomorrow, but tomorrow I'll ask you to do this. Those of you regulars to the Yaron Brook Show, prepare some homework, right? Get some questions ready. I might just do a Q&A show tomorrow. Yeah, this show is work. So, Andrew Yang said it. All these jobs of the future, like having a YouTube channel, is going to require different ways to compensate. So the way I get compensated for doing this show is not the traditional way. The way I get compensated for doing this show is by you supporting the show, contributing to the show. It's value for value, but not in the old kind of way, not in direct exchange, but indirect exchange. I don't require you, I actually provide this for free, I don't require you to support the show in order to listen, but I trust that those of you who gain value will support the show. And therefore, please do so. Those of you who gain value from the show, I know some of you clearly by the comments do not, but those of you who do gain value, and you can do that by going to yaronbrookshow.com/support, or you can support the show on subscribestar.com/yaronbrookshow. Of course, you can also use, as some of you have today, use the Super Chat feature on YouTube to support the show that way. All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I'm planning... Actually, I'm working all weekend. So, and on Sunday night, I'm on a plane, direct flight from San Juan, Puerto Rico, where I live, to Madrid, Spain, for 2.5 weeks of vacation in Spain and Portugal. I'm going to be eating at a lot of 3-star Michelin restaurants. I've got reservations already lined up. I'm quite excited. I'm going to be traveling with my wife through northern Spain, down into Portugal. I'm going to try to do some shows from the road. We'll see if it'll work. It really depends on the internet connection and on my wife's tolerance for me taking some time and doing a show. I won't do many of them, but I'll try to do a few. And we're gonna have a lot of fun. And I hope you're having a good summer and having some great vacations. All right. Tomorrow, I'm expecting now that the show will be in the evening. Something's come up, and I've got a bunch of work to do during the day. Usually, I do them in the afternoon. So I expect tomorrow the show will be in the evening. So let's set the time. Tomorrow at 8 p.m., same time, same place. 8 p.m., same time, same place here on YouTube. Those of you who value the show, and maybe some of you Andrew Yang fans, should come back. You'll learn something. You'll get an education, and you'll hear ideas you will not hear anywhere else. And by the way, those Andrew Yang fans, go read some Ayn Rand. Pick up Atlas Shrugged. Pick up The Fountainhead. Yeah. And don't complain. I'm giving you a fantastic opportunity here to get angry with me and to argue with fellow people in the chat. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. Bye.